Stop taking food from the table. Wait until the guests arrive. Then you and your daughter can eat. I froze. My mother-in-law blocked the fridge. And one more thing. My son's ex is moving into your home. But she didn't know my next move. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Mara Whitmore had spent 34 years learning how to hold things together. She learned it early, in a small house on the north side of Columbus, Ohio, where the heat only worked in 2 rooms and her mother worked doubles at a laundry service. She learned it in the way a child learns a language. Nobody sat her down and taught her. She simply understood that if she did not carry the weight, it would fall. By the time she was an adult, holding things together had become the shape of her whole life. She worked at a small dental office in a quiet suburb east of the city. 3 chairs, 2 hygienists, 1 dentist who hummed when he concentrated. Mara ran the front desk, the billing, the insurance appeals, and the schedule. When a patient came in shaking because they had not been to a dentist in 9 years, Mara was the one who sat with them and talked them down. She was good at that. She was good at making people feel like the ground was solid. Her husband, Caleb Whitmore, worked as a service manager at an auto dealership 20 minutes away. He was 36, easy to like, quick to laugh, and slow to decide anything that mattered. That was the trade she had made when she married him. She had known it. She had told herself it was fine. Every marriage is a trade. They had been married for 9 years. And then there was Lily, 8 years old. Front tooth missing on the left side. Obsessed with a chapter book series about a girl detective who solved crimes with her dog. Lily read those books with her mouth moving, whispering the words. And when she got to a scary part, she pulled her knees up under the blanket without ever looking away from the page. Lily was the reason for everything. Her bedroom sat at the end of the upstairs hallway, past the linen closet with the door that never latched right. It was not a fancy room. The carpet had a stain near the closet from a juice box in the 2nd grade. The window was small and faced the neighbor's fence. But it was hers. Pink curtains, chosen by Lily at a discount store when she was 6, after 20 minutes of serious consideration. A white bookshelf filled with children's novels, arranged by a system Mara had never fully understood and never questioned. A stuffed rabbit with one ear flattened from years of sleeping on it. Mara had bought that rabbit when Lily was 4, on a Tuesday at a pharmacy, because Lily had a fever and would not stop crying. And above the bed, in a plastic frame, a drawing Lily had made in the 1st grade. A crooked house, a yellow sun with too many rays. For words written in careful pencil. My home is my happy place. Mara had loved that picture from the first moment she saw it. Some nights, after Lily fell asleep, she would stand in the doorway and look at it and feel something settle in her chest. That feeling had not come to her in almost 2 months. Not since Judith moved in. Judith Whitmore was 63. She had arrived in June with 4 suitcases, a box of framed photographs, and a story about her sister that changed slightly every time she told it. There had been a disagreement. There had been an apartment. There had been money somewhere in the middle of it, though the details always blurred when Mara asked. Caleb had said it would be a few weeks. At first, Mara tried. She really did try. She cleared 2 shelves in the pantry. She learned that Judith took her coffee with exactly 1 sugar and would send it back if it was wrong. She listened to the stories about Caleb as a boy, the same 3 stories, told in the same order, until she could have recited them herself. But something shifted in the 2nd week. It began with the groceries. Mara came home on a Thursday with 4 bags and set them on the counter. Judith stood beside her and inspected the receipt without being invited to. You bought strawberries. Lily likes them. They're out of season. You paid double. Mara had folded the receipt and put it in her pocket. It's $4. $4 every week is $200 a year. That was the first one. After that, they came steadily. Judith commented on how much Lily ate at dinner, then commented on it again, then began saying it in front of Lily. She reorganized the refrigerator without asking and put the milk on the top shelf where Lily could not reach it. She started standing in the kitchen doorway during meals, arms crossed, watching, saying nothing, which was somehow worse than talking. And she began working on Caleb. Mara heard pieces of it through the wall. Low voice. Patient. The tone of a woman planting something and waiting. She's becoming too independent. She makes decisions without you. You used to be the one who decided. Caleb never argued. He never agreed either. He did the thing he had always done. He let it sit and hoped it would go away. It did not go away. It came to the dinner table on a Wednesday night in August. The kitchen was warm. Mara had the window over the sink cracked open, and the sound of a lawnmower drifted in from 2 houses down, along with the smell of cut grass and hot pavement. She had made chicken and rice with green beans because Lily would eat green beans if they had butter on them, and Mara had learned to pick her battles. Lily sat at the table swinging her legs. She had a library book beside her plate and one finger holding her place. No reading at dinner, bug. I'm not reading. I'm holding. Mara smiled at that despite herself. She set the plate down in front of her daughter. Chicken, rice, 6 green beans, a small amount of butter. Judith crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and took the plate. Just took it. Lifted it right off the placemat. Lily's hand stayed in the air for a second, still shaped around a plate that was no longer there. She looked at her grandmother. Then at her mother. Mara turned from the stove. Why? Judith held the plate against her chest. The guests haven't arrived. Mara set the spoon down. What guests? The Ashfords. Caleb invited them for dessert. It's rude for the family to be halfway through the meal when people walk in. Dessert is at 8. It's 6:15. Mara wiped her hands on the towel and hung it on the oven handle. Lily needs to eat. She can wait. Mara looked at her for a long moment. There is a specific kind of quiet that comes over a person when something finally becomes clear. Mara felt it arrive. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder and more useful than anger. The feeling of a fog lifting to show you exactly where the road ends. Judith pointed toward the refrigerator with the plate still in her hand. Stop taking food from the table. Wait until the guests arrive. Then you and your daughter can eat. You and your daughter. Not us. Not the family. You and your daughter. Mara's voice came out very calm. Calmer than she felt. You don't decide when my daughter eats. Judith laughed. It was a short, dismissive sound, like a door closing. I raised Caleb. I know more about children than you do. You raised one child, 36 years ago, in a different world. And he turned out fine. Mara let that sit in the air a moment. She did not say what she was thinking. She was aware of Lily at the table, watching, taking everything in the way children do, storing it somewhere permanent. Footsteps in the hallway. Caleb came in, still in his work polo with the dealership logo on the chest, keys in one hand, the smell of the shop floor on him. Motor oil and cold soda. He stopped when he saw their faces. What's going on? Mara did not look away from Judith. Tell your mother to give Lily her food. Caleb glanced between them. He shifted his weight. He set the keys down on the counter with unnecessary care, the way people do when they want an extra second before speaking. Mom, just give it back. The pause before he said it lasted maybe 2 seconds. Mara counted every one. Judith slammed the plate onto the counter. A green bean rolled off the edge and onto the floor. Lily flinched. Then Judith turned and looked directly at Mara, and her face changed. The irritation cleared away, and something else moved underneath it. Something that had been waiting all evening for its moment. Fine. She smoothed the front of her blouse. But since we're being honest tonight, there's something else you need to know. Mara waited. She did not fill the silence. She had learned that from 9 years of dealing with insurance companies. When someone is about to hand you something, let them hand it to you. Caleb's ex-wife, Renee Dalton, is moving in. The lawnmower outside cut off. The kitchen went completely quiet except for the tick of the oven cooling. Mara turned her head slowly toward her husband. What? Caleb's face did something complicated. He looked at his mother first, which told Mara most of what she needed to know. She's going through a difficult time. How long have you known? Mara, how long? He rubbed the back of his neck. A couple of weeks. 2 weeks. 14 days of sitting across from her at this table. 14 mornings of coffee in the same kitchen. She thought about Sunday when they had watched a movie on the couch, and he had put his hand on her knee, and she had thought, we're okay, we're getting through this. She had thought they were getting through it. You've known for 2 weeks. I was going to tell you. He said it fast. Too fast. The way a man says a line he has practiced in the truck on the way home. I was waiting for the right time. There is no right time to tell your wife that your ex-wife is moving into her house. There's only earlier and later. You chose later. Judith cut in. Renee needs somewhere to stay. She was part of this family before you. There it was, clean and open, finally, after 8 weeks of hints. Before you. Mara did not raise her voice. She was aware of Lily still at the table, still very still. One finger still holding her place in a book she was not reading. She looked at Caleb. Is that true? He should have said no. It would have cost him nothing. 2 letters. He hesitated. And in that hesitation, Mara understood everything she needed to understand about the next year of her life. She picked the green bean up off the floor and dropped it in the trash. She washed her hands. She set the plate back down in front of her daughter and pushed the fork into her hand. Eat. Bug. Lily ate. Slowly, watching everyone. Mara stood at the counter with her back to the room and looked out the window at the yard, at the fence, at the last of the light going orange over the neighbor's roof, and she felt something inside her stop trying. Not break. Stop trying. There is a difference, and she would spend the next several months learning exactly how much of one. Renee Dalton arrived 3 days later, on a Saturday morning, in a gray sedan with a rear bumper held on by 2 zip ties. Mara watched from the kitchen window with a mug of coffee going cold in her hands. Renee was 37. She had been Caleb's wife for 5 years, from 26 to 31, and Mara knew the story of that marriage the way a second wife always knows it. In fragments, told by a man who wanted to seem fair. They had fought about money. They had fought about who handled what. Renee had taken a job in Charlotte and gone without him, and 11 months later there were papers. No children. Nothing to keep them tied. Mara had never disliked her. She had never had a reason to. Renee had been a name on a form, a person in a few photographs in a box in the basement, someone who existed in a chapter of Caleb's life that closed before Mara opened the book. That morning, watching her lift 2 suitcases out of the trunk, Mara felt the chapter reopen. Judith went out the front door before the car door was even shut. She hugged Renee on the driveway, held her by both shoulders, and looked at her the way you look at someone you have missed. You're finally home. The window was open. Mara heard it clearly. She set her mug in the sink. Home. Renee came in with the suitcases and stopped in the entryway, and to her credit, she looked uncomfortable. Her eyes moved across the family photographs on the wall. Mara and Caleb at the courthouse. Lily at 4 in a blue swimsuit. Lily last Christmas holding a wrapped box bigger than her head. Thank you for letting me stay, Renee said. Mara dried her hands. I didn't know I was being asked. Caleb was there instantly, moving between them the way a man moves when he has spent his whole life avoiding rooms like this one. Can we not start? Mara looked at him. Just looked. I didn't start anything. Renee got the guest room. It was on the first floor, off the hallway past the laundry. A double bed, a dresser, a window facing the side yard. Mara had painted that room herself 2 summers ago. Pale green. She had done it over a weekend while Caleb watched a game. For 2 nights, the house stayed quiet in the way a house does before weather. Mara noticed things. She could not stop noticing things. She noticed that Judith made breakfast for Renee on Sunday morning, eggs and toast, and did not make any for Lily. She noticed that Renee had put a framed photograph on the dresser in the guest room, and when Mara walked past the open door, she saw that it was a picture of Renee and Caleb at somebody's wedding, both of them laughing, maybe 8 years ago. She noticed that Caleb stopped coming to bed at the same time as her. She noticed that the house had begun to feel like a place she was visiting. Saturday morning came around again. Mara was downstairs sorting a load of towels when she heard voices upstairs. Not raised. That was what caught her attention. Low and organized. The sound of people discussing something they had already decided. She set the towels down. The stairs in that house had a creak on the 4th step. Mara stepped over it out of habit, the same way she had for 9 years, and she was at the top of the hallway before anyone knew she was coming. Lily's bedroom door was open. Renee stood in the middle of the room with her arms loose at her sides, turning slowly, taking in the space. Judith stood beside her, near the closet, with a measuring tape in her hand. An actual measuring tape. Lily sat on the edge of her bed in her pajamas with the rabbit pressed against her stomach, both arms wrapped around it, watching the adults with the careful stillness of a child who knows something is wrong but not what. Mara stopped in the doorway. "What are you doing?" Judith did not even turn around. She let the tape retract with a snap. "Renee needs a proper bedroom." The words landed and Mara heard them, and for one full second she genuinely did not believe she had heard them correctly. She looked at her daughter. "Where is she supposed to sleep?" "Your room has a couch." Mara laughed. "Once. No humor in it at all. You want my daughter to sleep on a couch so your son's ex can have her bedroom." Renee folded her arms across her chest. "I didn't ask for her room. You're standing in it. Judith brought me up here. And you came." Judith snapped. "She needs somewhere comfortable to stay. She's been through enough." "Then use the guest room." "It's too small. There's no closet." Mara pointed at the doorframe. Her hand was steady, which surprised her. "That room is for my daughter." Judith stepped forward. She was shorter than Mara by 3 inches, and she had a way of coming close that was meant to be intimidating and had stopped working around week 5. "Don't make this ugly. You're standing in an 8-year-old girl's bedroom telling me she has to give it up. It's already ugly. You did that." Renee moved toward the desk in the corner, where Lily kept her drawings and her markers in a plastic bin and a rock she had found at the park that she was convinced was a fossil. "I'm not taking her things. I'm just seeing what's here." Mara crossed the room and put herself between Renee and the desk. "Don't touch anything. Get out of my way. This is my daughter's room. You're a guest in this house, and you've been here 5 days. Renee pushed past her shoulder. It was not violent. It was worse than violent. It was casual. The shove of someone who does not consider the person in front of them to be a real obstacle. Mara pushed her hand away. "Don't." And then it went fast, the way these things do. Renee grabbed her arm above the elbow, fingers hard. Mara pulled free and stepped back, and her voice dropped into a register she rarely used. "You touch me again, and we're done talking." Renee's face was red now. Whatever had been holding her together since the driveway had come apart. She turned and swept her hand across the second shelf of the bookcase, and a wooden box went off the edge. It hit the floor, and the lid broke off the hinge. That box had held Lily's birthday cards. Every one, since she was 2. Mara had helped her tape the lid. Lily screamed. It was not a dramatic scream. It was a short, high, involuntary sound, and then she was crying with her whole body, folded around the rabbit, and the sound she made after that was worse than the scream. Footsteps hammered up the stairs. Caleb came through the door breathing hard. "What is happening?" Mara pointed at Renee. She did not shout. She had gone somewhere past shouting. "Get her out of my daughter's room." Caleb looked at Renee, who was breathing hard, one hand still open at her side. He looked at his mother, who had already arranged her face into something wounded. He looked at his daughter, crying on the bed, surrounded by the cards that had spilled across the carpet. And Mara watched him. She watched him take all of it in. She watched the moment arrive where a man decides what he is. "Everyone needs to calm down," he said. Mara looked at him for a long moment. "That's your daughter." "I know it's my daughter, Mara. That's your daughter on the bed." Something moved across Caleb's face then. Mara saw it happen. She saw the exact second he understood what he had just done, and understood that he had done it in front of everyone, and understood that it could not be taken back. Too late. That was the thing about Caleb. He always got there. He just always got there afterward. Mara went to the bed and picked her daughter up, 8 years old and too big to be carried and carried anyway, and took her downstairs. She sat Lily at the kitchen table. She got her a glass of water. She crouched down and held both of her daughter's hands and waited until the crying slowed. "Are we in trouble?" Lily asked. Mara felt something go through her at that. She kept her face steady. "No, Bug. Nobody's in trouble. Sometimes grown-ups are wrong, and it's loud." "Is Renee taking my room?" "No. Grandma said." "I know what Grandma said." Mara pushed the hair back from Lily's forehead. "I'm telling you what's true. Nobody is taking your room. Not today, not ever. Do you believe me?" Lily thought about it. Actually thought about it, which broke Mara's heart a little more than the crying had. "Yes." "Good. Go get your backpack. Put in 3 books and your pajamas and the rabbit." "Where are we going?" "Aunt Bethany's." "For how long?" Mara stood up. "I'll tell you when I know." She packed an overnight bag in 11 minutes. Underwear, a change of clothes, her laptop, the folder from the filing cabinet with the birth certificate and the marriage license and the mortgage statements. She took the folder without letting herself think too hard about why. Caleb stood in the bedroom doorway while she did it. You don't have to leave. She did not stop packing. Mara, come on. It got out of hand. That's all. Zipper. Talk to me. She picked up the bag and turned around and looked at him. I've talked to you for 2 months. Then she went down the stairs, past Judith in the living room, past Renee in the hallway, out the front door, and into the August heat with her daughter's hand in hers. She did not slam the door. She closed it carefully. That night, in Bethany's spare room, with Lily asleep beside her and a streetlight coming through the blinds in stripes, Mara lay awake and did not cry. She thought. She did not tell anyone what she was planning, because she did not have a plan yet. She had one certainty, and she turned it over in the dark until it hardened. She was not going back into that house unprotected. Bethany Reyes was 2 years older than Mara and had never once in her life softened bad news. She stood in her kitchen the next morning in a bathrobe, pouring coffee, looking at her sister across the counter with the particular expression of a woman who had been waiting 9 years to say something and was deciding whether today was the day. Say it, Mara said. I'm not saying anything. You're standing there saying it very loudly. Bethany set the pot down. I didn't like how he handled your mother-in-law from day one. That's all. That's the whole speech. That's not the whole speech. No. Bethany slid the mug across. But it's all you're getting before 8 in the morning. Lily was in the living room with cartoons on low volume. Mara could hear the tinny music and, occasionally, a small laugh, and that laugh did more to steady her than the coffee did. At 9, she started calling attorneys. The first office could not see her for 3 weeks. The second wanted a retainer she could not put on a card without Caleb seeing the statement. The third answered on the second ring, and a woman named Delia Frost had a cancellation on Tuesday at 11. Mara took it. The office was on the second floor of a brick building downtown, above a print shop, with a window unit rattling in the corner and about 40 file boxes stacked along one wall. Delia Frost was in her 50s, reading glasses pushed up into gray hair, a legal pad in front of her, and a pen she clicked while she listened. Mara had expected to feel small in that room. She did not. She felt, for the first time in weeks, like she was somewhere that ran on rules. She talked for 11 minutes without stopping. The dinner, the plate, the 2 weeks, the measuring tape, the box on the floor, her daughter screaming. Delia listened and wrote almost nothing. When Mara finished, the lawyer set the pen down. Okay, most people come in here and ask me one of 2 questions. Either how fast can I get out, or how much can I take from him? She folded her hands. Which one are you? Mara did not have to think about it. Neither. I want to know what I can legally do to protect my daughter while we separate. Delia looked at her for a second longer. Good, she said. That's the only question that gets you anywhere. What followed was not dramatic. It was the least dramatic hour of Mara's life, and she would later think of it as the hour everything turned. Delia explained the landscape in plain language. Ohio law. Shared parenting as the default assumption. The difference between what felt fair and what a court would find persuasive. She explained that Mara could leave the home with the child without it being abandonment, but that where Lily slept, went to school, and lived over the next several months would matter enormously, because courts look for stability and they define stability as whatever pattern is already working. So do not pull her out of her school, Delia said. Do not move her to a different district to make a point. Do not, under any circumstances, block her father from seeing her without a court order telling you to. Right now, he is a father with a bad month. If you cut him off, he becomes a father being kept from his child, and that is a much better story than the one he currently has. Mara wrote it down. What do I do instead? You document. Delia leaned back in her chair, and the chair complained. Here's what almost nobody understands. Family court is not a stage. Nobody is going to stand up and give a speech that changes everything. There is no moment where the judge slams a hand down and says he sees the truth. It is paperwork, and hearings that start 40 minutes late, and questions that feel insulting because they're standard. The people who do well in that room are not the people with the best story. They are the people with the most boring, most complete, most verifiable record. Boring, Mara repeated. Boring wins. Every time. Mara went back to Bethany's that afternoon and opened her laptop at the kitchen table and started. She made a folder. Inside it, subfolders. Texts. Emails. Financial. Timeline. Photos. She began at the beginning in June, and she worked forward. She screenshotted every message. Judith's texts, which were extensive, and which Judith had clearly never once imagined anyone reading back to her. 6 messages in a row about how Mara let Lily eat too much. A message from July telling Caleb, in writing, that he had made a mistake and that Renee had always understood him better. A message about the guest room, sent 2 weeks before Renee arrived, discussing arrangements Mara had known nothing about. 2 weeks. Confirmed in writing, with a date stamp. She pulled bank statements going back 3 years and put them in order. She was not looking for hidden money. She simply wanted to be the person in the room who knew what the numbers were. She photographed the broken box and the cards on the carpet and the shelf where it had sat. She had taken those pictures Saturday afternoon before she left, standing in that room with her hands shaking, and at the time she had not been able to say why she was doing it. Now she knew why. She wrote the timeline last, and it took her 4 hours. June 14th. Judith arrives. Caleb states 2 to 3 weeks. June 27th. First comment on grocery spending. July 3rd. Refrigerator reorganized. Milk moved to top shelf. July 19th. Text from Judith to Caleb regarding Renee. See screenshot 14. August 6th. Dinner. Plate removed from Lily. Judith announces Renee will move in. Caleb confirms he has known approximately 2 weeks. August 9th. Renee arrives. August 15th. Incident in Lily's bedroom. Witnesses: Caleb Whitmore, Judith Whitmore. Physical contact initiated by Renee Dalton. Property damaged. Lily present throughout. She read it back 3 times. Then she did the hardest part. She took out the sentences that were true but not provable. She took out how it had felt. She took out the word cruel and the word deliberate and the sentence about Caleb's face in the doorway that she had spent 20 minutes writing. She did not exaggerate anything. She did not invent a single detail. She did not add the phone call in July where Judith had said something unforgivable because there was no recording of it, and one unprovable claim would poison every provable one. When she was done, the document was cold and short and boring. It was also, she understood, a weapon. Bethany came in around midnight, saw the laptop, saw her sister's face, and did not ask a single question. She put a plate of leftover pasta down beside the computer and left the room. Mara ate it without tasting it. Around 1 in the morning, her phone lit up. Caleb. Then again. Then a text. Are you awake? Can we talk? Please. She looked at it for a long time. She thought about 9 years. She thought about the courthouse photo in the hallway, both of them squinting in the sun. She thought about the night Lily was born, and how he had held her hand and gone white, and then laughed. She thought about 100 ordinary mornings. Then she thought about 2 seconds of hesitation in a kitchen, and the word calm, said to a room where an 8-year-old was crying. She put the phone face down. She saved the document, backed it up to a drive, emailed a copy to herself, and closed the laptop. Then she went and lay down beside her daughter in the dark and listened to her breathe and understood that she was not sad anymore. She was ready. He came on Thursday evening, 6 days after she left. Mara heard the truck before she saw it. 9 years of hearing that engine pull into a driveway. Her body reacted before her mind did, a small automatic lift in her chest that she noticed and did not like. She met him at the door and did not open the screen. Bethany's porch light had a moth going at it. The air had cooled a little, and somewhere down the street a basketball was hitting a driveway in a slow, uneven rhythm. Caleb had shaved. That was the first thing she noticed. He had shaved and put on a shirt with a collar, and he was holding nothing, no flowers, no bag, just standing there with his hands half open like a man who had rehearsed something and lost it on the drive over. Mara, please. You need to leave. 5 minutes. You need to leave. He put his palm flat against the doorframe, not pushing, just needing to touch something. I made a mistake. You made several. He nodded quickly, taking it, agreeing too easily the way he always did when he wanted conversation to move past the hard part. I never wanted Renee to take Lily's room. I want you to know that. That was never something I agreed to, but you allowed it. I didn't know they were up there. You knew she was in the house. You knew your mother had been talking about the room for 2 weeks. You knew, and you decided that if you didn't say anything, it might resolve itself. Mara's voice stayed level. That's what you do, Caleb. You wait, and when waiting fails, you tell the person who's bleeding to calm down. He flinched. That's not fair. It's exactly fair. That's the problem. He looked past her into the house. She knew what he was looking for. Somewhere in there, Lily was on the living room floor with a coloring book and the television on. Can I see her? That question landed differently than the rest, and Mara took a breath before answering, because she had promised herself she would never answer that question out of anger. Yes. Saturday, 10 to 5. Here or somewhere public, your choice. Caleb blinked. Just yes. She's your daughter. That hasn't changed, and I'm not going to pretend it has. Mara paused. But you don't come here at night without calling. Not anymore. He looked exhausted. Genuinely exhausted. There were shadows under his eyes and a line between his brows that had not been there in June. My mother pushed me into it. All of it. Renee staying, the room, everything. You don't know what she's like when she... I know exactly what she's like. I've lived with her for 2 months. You've lived with her for 36 years, and you still let her drive. She's my mother. Your mother didn't make you keep secrets from me. The basketball stopped down the street. Caleb opened his mouth and closed it. He had no answer. Mara watched him look for one and fail to find one, and there was no satisfaction in it at all. I told them both to back off, he said finally. I did. After you left. I told Renee she's out by the end of the month. Okay. Okay. That's it. It's a fact. I'm receiving it. He ran a hand through his hair. Look, let's go home and fix this. You and me. We sit down, we get everybody out of the house, and we fix it. Mara looked at him through the screen. That's not my home anymore. Something in his expression changed. She watched it happen in slow motion, the way you watch a glass go off the edge of a counter. What does that mean? It means I'm filing for divorce. He shook his head. Once, then again, faster. No, we're not, Mara. We've been married 9 years. You don't throw that away over one bad week. It wasn't a week. Over one fight. It wasn't a fight. She stepped closer to the screen, and her voice dropped, and it was steadier than she expected it to be. There was a moment in that room where you had to choose. Not a long moment. 2 seconds. And in those 2 seconds, you chose the version of the story where nobody had done anything wrong, because that was the easiest one to live in. Our daughter was on the bed. She was crying so hard she couldn't breathe right. And you looked at her, and then you looked at me, and you said everyone needs to calm down. I panicked. I know. Mara nodded. That's what makes it real. That's who you are when there's no time to think. And I can't build a life on a person who has to think about it first. Caleb's eyes were wet. She saw it, and she did not move. I love you, he said. I believe you. Then how is this happening? She put her hand on the door. Because love was never the part that was missing. She closed it, and stood with her back against it, and listened to the truck take a long time to start. Caleb was served on a Tuesday afternoon at the dealership. Mara had not planned it that way. Delia's process server had tried the house twice and gotten nowhere, and the third attempt went to his workplace, which was standard, and which Mara knew would humiliate him in front of people he supervised. She sat with that for an evening. She decided she could live with it. Judith found out within the hour. The first call came at 4:12. Mara let it ring. The second at 4:15. The third at 4:19. At 4:26 she picked up, because she wanted to know exactly what she was dealing with, and because she had learned in Delia's office that information is worth more than peace. Judith did not say hello. You are destroying this family. Mara stood in Bethany's backyard with the phone at her ear and watched a neighbor's dog work a tennis ball along the fence line. Are you finished? He came home shaking. Do you understand that? A man served papers in front of his own staff, like a criminal. He was served at work because he wouldn't answer the door at home. You could have handled this like an adult. I am handling it like an adult. That's what the paperwork is. Judith's voice climbed. This is my son's marriage. You do not get to end it because of a disagreement about a bedroom. Mara let a long beat pass. Judith. On July 19th, you sent Caleb a message that said Renee had always understood him better than I did. Do you remember writing that? Silence on the line. You've made a lot of phone calls in the last week. So have I. The difference is I have receipts for mine. Mara watched the dog drop the ball and pick it up again. Don't call this number again. She blocked it that night. Judith went around her. The messages started Thursday. First from Caleb's aunt in Dayton, a woman Mara had met perhaps 4 times. How could you do this to Caleb? He loves you. Then a cousin. Families have disagreements. This isn't a reason to break up a home. Think about that little girl. Then Caleb's uncle, who had not spoken to Mara in 3 years, and who wrote 4 paragraphs about commitment. Then a woman from the church Judith attended, whom Mara had never met at all, offering to pray with her about her decision. Mara read every message once. She did not respond to a single one. Bethany found her at the kitchen table at 11 at night with the phone face up beside her. You're not answering any of them? No. Not even the aunt? She was decent to you at Thanksgiving. Mara looked up. Every one of those people heard one version of this before they wrote to me. They didn't call to ask what happened. They called to tell me what they'd already decided. She turned the phone face down. If I answer, I'm arguing. And you can't argue someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. All I'd be doing is generating more material for Judith to forward around. Bethany sat down across from her. That's very cold. It's very quiet, Mara said. There's a difference. The case moved the way Delia had promised it would move. Slowly, and on paper. Both sides filed for temporary orders covering the house, the finances, and Lily. Mara requested temporary primary physical custody, with a standard parenting schedule for Caleb. Every other weekend, one evening midweek, alternating holidays. Her own attorney drafted it. You're giving him more than he'd get if he fought you, Delia said, reading it back. I'm not trying to keep him from her. I know. I'm telling you it also happens to be strategically excellent. Don't be uncomfortable about that. Mara was uncomfortable about it anyway. Then Caleb made his second mistake, and it was worse than the first. His attorney filed a response. In it, Caleb stated that his wife had overreacted to a minor domestic disagreement about room assignments, that no harm had come to the child, and that Mara had removed Lily from the family home impulsively and without cause, in a manner that suggested emotional instability. Delia called her at work to read it to her. Mara stood in the supply closet of the dental office with the door shut and her hand over her mouth. Mara, you still there? Yes. How do you want to respond? Mara looked at the shelves of gauze and gloves and small boxes of things, and she felt her face get hot, and she waited for that to pass, because she had learned by now that the first thing she wanted to say was never the thing she should say. Emotional instability, she said. It's a common play. It's also a bad one when it isn't true, because it invites the other side to prove that it isn't. Then let's prove it isn't. What Delia filed 9 days later was not a speech. It was an exhibit list. 14 screenshots of text messages, in chronological order, with dates and senders identified. For photographs of a broken wooden box and its contents on a bedroom floor, with metadata showing they were taken at 2:47 p.m. on August 15th. Bank records showing the household expenses Mara had paid, month by month, for 3 years. A written statement from Bethany Reyes, describing the condition of the child when her mother brought her through the door that evening. Bethany had written it herself, in her own words, and Mara had not been allowed to see it until it was filed. It was 1 page. It described a child who would not let go of her mother's leg for 2 hours, who asked 3 separate times whether her books were still in her room, and who woke at 4 in the morning and had to be told again. And Mara's timeline. Boring, dated, verifiable. There was no closing argument. There was no dramatic reveal. There was a folder and a filing fee and a stamp. Delia sent her a copy of everything by email, with 1 line at the top. This is what winning looks like. It's ugly and it's slow, and it's mostly attachments. Mara read the whole thing at Bethany's kitchen table with a cup of tea going cold, and when she got to Bethany's statement, she had to stop for a minute and put her hand flat on the table until the feeling passed. Then she kept reading, because facts mattered more than stories, and she had spent 3 weeks making sure she was the one holding the facts. The Franklin County courtroom was smaller than Mara expected and much colder. Fluorescent lights. Blue carpet worn through in a path from the door to the tables. A wall clock that ticked audibly. Someone in the row behind her kept clearing their throat. The whole room smelled faintly of old paper and floor cleaner. There was no gallery full of family. There was no music. There was a magistrate in her 50s with a laptop open in front of her and a docket that had 11 other cases on it that day. Mara sat with her hands folded and her back straight and did not look at Caleb, who sat 12 feet away in a suit she had bought him for a wedding in 2019. Caleb's attorney went first. He was competent and unmemorable. He said that his client was a devoted father with no history of any kind, that he had never missed a support obligation, that he had attended parent-teacher conferences and coached one season of soccer, and that this matter had escalated far beyond what the underlying facts justified. The magistrate looked over her glasses. Mrs. Whitmore, do you dispute that the father is a loving parent? Delia had prepared her for this. Mara had practiced the answer 11 times, and every practice had made it shorter. No, I've never said he isn't. The magistrate made a note. Then why are you requesting primary residential custody? Mara took one breath. Because Lily needs stability right now, and right now his house doesn't have any. Her bedroom was nearly taken from her by 2 adults with a measuring tape. She watched a physical confrontation in her own room, and her belongings were broken in front of her. And when her father came into that room and saw her crying, his first instinct was to tell everyone to calm down instead of getting those women out of her space. She kept her hands still. I'm not saying he doesn't love her. I'm saying that on the day it counted, he protected the peace in the room instead of protecting his child. She's 8. She needs one place where nobody has to be talked into being on her side. The room was quiet. The clock ticked. Caleb looked down at the table. Mara did not feel triumphant. She felt tired and clear and slightly sick. The magistrate turned a page. Mrs. Whitmore, are you willing to support and encourage the child's relationship with her father? Yes. The pause that followed was the only genuinely surprising thing that happened in that room. Caleb's head came up. His attorney glanced sideways. Even the magistrate hesitated for half a second before typing. You understand that includes facilitating regular contact, not obstructing his parenting time, and not speaking negatively about him to the child. I understand. I've already been doing it. He's seen her every Saturday since the 15th of August and twice on weeknights. That's in the record. It is. The magistrate looked at her for a moment longer than necessary. Thank you. There was no gasp. Nobody wept. The hearing ran 40 minutes and ended with a scheduling discussion about a review date in November. But Mara had understood something that Caleb's side had not, and Delia confirmed it in the hallway afterward with her coat over her arm. That's the whole case right there, Delia said. They came in here trying to prove you were unstable. You came in here agreeing that he's a good father. Which one of you looks like the person acting in the child's interest? Mara watched Caleb walk to the elevator with his attorney, 20 feet away, not looking back. I wasn't performing. I know you weren't. That's why it worked. The temporary order came through 9 days later. Mara received primary physical custody. Caleb received a standard parenting schedule, effectively the one Mara's own attorney had proposed. He was ordered to continue contributing toward Lily's expenses at an amount calculated from the state worksheet, and the number was smaller than Judith would later tell relatives it was. The house was a separate matter entirely. It had been purchased 11 months after the wedding. Both names on the deed. Both incomes on the mortgage application. A refinance in 2022 that had rolled in a new roof and a water heater. There was no version of the story where either of them simply walked in and claimed it, which meant negotiation, which meant months. Mara learned the shape of it that autumn. An appraisal, a dispute about the appraisal, a second appraisal, emails between attorneys that cost her money every time they were opened, discussions about whether the roof loan counted as marital debt, discussions about whether the $4,000 Judith had once given them for a car counted as a gift or a loan, which took 6 weeks to resolve and cost more than $4,000 to argue about. There were nights she wanted to scream at the slowness of it. She did not. She made dinner. She helped with spelling homework. She went to work, ran the front desk, calmed down people who had not seen a dentist in 9 years. And on the days it got heavy, She opened the folder on her laptop and read her own timeline, cold and dated and boring, and remembered that she did not need to win everything in one afternoon. She only needed to still be standing when it ended. The thing about a divorce is that it drags everything into daylight, and daylight is not kind to people who have been operating in the dark. Caleb learned that in October. It started with his aunt in Dayton, the one who had sent Mara the message about love. She called Caleb on a Sunday and said, carefully, that she had been thinking about something, and she wanted to ask him directly rather than hear it secondhand. Your mother told us Mara put her hands on Renee, that she physically threw her out of the house. Caleb said nothing for a moment. That's not what happened. She said it twice, once at the church and once to your uncle. Renee grabbed her arm. Renee knocked the box off the shelf. Mara didn't touch anybody. His aunt was quiet. She also said Mara wasn't feeding Lily properly. Mara heard about that conversation 2 weeks later, from Bethany, who heard it from a woman at her gym whose sister-in-law knew the family, which was how information moved in that particular part of Ohio. She did not react to it. She had stopped reacting to Judith's version of events sometime in September. It cost her nothing now, because everything Judith said existed only in the air, and everything Mara had said existed in a file with a stamp on it. But it cost Caleb, because Caleb had to live with the woman. Mara got the details months afterward, in pieces from Caleb himself, and she believed them because they did not flatter him. He had come home from work on a Tuesday and found his mother on the phone in the kitchen, mid-sentence, saying something about Mara that he had never told her, and that was not true. She hung up quickly when she saw him. He stood in the doorway of his own kitchen. The house was too quiet. Renee had moved to the guest room permanently by then and mostly stayed in it. The upstairs hallway had a bedroom in it with pink curtains that nobody slept in, and he had started avoiding that end of the house entirely. Who was that? Your cousin. What did you tell her? Caleb, what did you tell her? And it came out over the next hour, the way these things come out, in a kitchen with a cold cup of coffee on the table and the light going down outside. She had wanted Renee back. Not recently. For years. She had never accepted the second marriage. She had told herself Renee was the real one and Mara was the correction. And when Renee's life fell apart in Charlotte, Judith had seen an opening and taken it, and she had built the entire summer around it. The comments about groceries. The comments about independence. The suggestion that Renee needed somewhere to stay. The suggestion later that the guest room was too small. Caleb sat down across from her. Did you know Renee was going to take Lily's room? Judith folded her hands. Mom, did you know? She said nothing. Caleb told Mara later that the silence lasted about 8 seconds and that it was the longest 8 seconds of his life, and that somewhere in the middle of it he stopped being a son and became something else. He said, "You need to leave my house." Judith's head came up. "I'm your mother, and I'm your daughter's father." He put his hands flat on the table. "That's supposed to come first. You knew that. You counted on it not coming first. You're throwing me out over a bedroom. I'm throwing you out because my daughter is 8 years old, and the last memory she has of this house is being screamed at in her own room while 3 adults argued about who got to sleep in it. And because when she asks me why her mother doesn't live here, I have to tell her the truth someday." Judith began to cry. Caleb had spent 36 years responding to those tears. It was a reflex older than his marriage, older than his job, older than most of what he knew about himself. It had started when he was 9 and his father left, and it had never once failed to work. He watched her cry, and he did not move. "You have until the 15th, he said. "I'll help you find something. I'll pay the deposit. But you're not living here." Judith moved into a 1-bedroom apartment near Reynoldsburg at the end of the month. She told people she had chosen to give her son space. Mara heard that version too, eventually, and let it stand. She had no interest in correcting the record. The record had already been corrected in the only place that mattered, and it had a case number on it. Renee did not get the ending Judith had promised her. She got a guest room with a pale green wall and a door she kept closed, in a house belonging to a man who had stopped meeting her at the table for dinner. Caleb told her at the beginning of November. Mara only knew the shape of it, not the words, but she knew Renee moved into an apartment complex off Livingston Avenue 2 weeks later, and she knew from a mutual acquaintance that Renee had gotten a job at a distribution center on second shift, and she knew that whatever Renee had imagined coming back to Ohio for had not been that. The apology came in December. It came by text, which Mara appreciated, because it meant she could take her time. I know you probably won't read this. I'm not asking for anything. I've been thinking about that Saturday for 4 months. I was wrong. I let Judith tell me a story about my own life, and I walked into your daughter's room because I wanted the story to be true. I'm sorry, especially for the box. I keep thinking about the sound it made when it hit the floor. Mara read it standing in the parking lot of Lily's school with the engine running and the heater going. She read it 3 times. Then she asked Renee to meet her at a coffee place on a Thursday morning because there were things that should not be resolved over a phone. They sat by the window. It was raining, the thin, cold rain that comes in December before it can properly snow, and the glass fogged at the corners, and the espresso machine kept hissing behind the counter. Renee looked different, thinner in the face. She had her hands wrapped around the cup and did not drink from it. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I didn't think you would. I almost didn't. I meant what I sent." "I know." Mara set her own cup down. "That's why I came." Renee started talking then, and it came out in a rush, the way things do when someone has been holding them a long time. The job in Charlotte that ended. The lease she could not cover. The call from Judith in June. The first call in 7 years, and how good it had felt to be wanted by somebody. How Judith had talked about Caleb in the present tense. How by the time she was driving north with 2 suitcases, she had genuinely believed she was coming back to something that was still there. "I know how that sounds," she said. "It sounds like you were used." Renee looked up, surprised. "I was. That doesn't make you innocent." Mara said it without heat. "It just means there were 2 of you doing it." Renee's shoulders came down. "No, you're right." Mara turned her cup a quarter turn on the table and considered how to say the next part, and then decided to say it plainly, because she had spent an entire year learning what softness cost. "I accept that you apologized." Something eased in Renee's face. Relief, visible, immediate. "But I don't trust you." The relief went out like a light. "You put your hand on my arm in my daughter's bedroom," Mara said. "You broke something of hers while she watched. I've thought about it for 4 months too, and I've decided that an apology and trust are 2 different transactions, and you've only made one of them." Renee's eyes were wet. "That's fair. You don't have to agree with me." "No, she stopped and started again. "I was going to say you don't have to trust me." Mara nodded once. "Exactly." They sat with that for a moment. The rain got heavier against the window. "Is she okay?" Renee asked. "Lily. She's 8. She's mostly okay. She asks about things at strange times." Mara picked up her coat. "She asked me in October whether her room would still be there if I ever got a boyfriend. I don't know where she got that. That's the part you don't get to apologize away. That question is going to be somewhere in her for a long time." Renee did not answer. Mara stood. "I hope your apartment works out. I mean that. I'm not wishing anything bad on you. You're just not wishing anything good either." "No," Mara said. "I'm not wishing anything at all. That's the point." She walked out into the rain and did not look back through the window, and by the time she reached the car, she had already stopped thinking about it. Renee and Caleb never got back together. The thing Judith had built the whole summer around collapsed completely, and nobody was standing in the rubble but Judith. The divorce was finalized in July, 11 months after the dinner. By then, Mara knew the courthouse well enough to know which entrance had the shorter line, which vending machine took cards, and which bench in the second-floor hallway got sun in the morning. She sat on that bench with a folder in her lap and waited to be called. The settlement was not a victory in the way people imagine victories. She did not get everything she asked for. Caleb did not either. The house was refinanced into her name alone, and she paid him for his share of the equity out of a retirement account she had spent 9 years building and had planned to keep. Delia had walked her through the math 4 separate times. "You're paying a real price for that house," Delia said. "I want you to say out loud that you understand that." "I understand it." "Say why you're doing it anyway." Mara had looked at the number on the page. "Because she's already changed schools 0 times, and I intend to keep it that way. And because there's a room at the end of that hallway that she was told she had to give up. She's going to grow up in that room. That's what I'm buying." Delia had capped her pen. "Then it's a good deal." Deals are only bad when you don't know what you're paying for. The parenting plan was formalized on the terms that had been running informally for a year. Mara kept primary residential custody. Caleb had every other weekend, a Wednesday evening, half the summer, alternating holidays. There was a right of first refusal clause for overnights, a clause about school communication, and a paragraph about extended family contact that Delia had drafted carefully and that Mara had read 4 times before signing. Judith could see Lily during Caleb's parenting time, supervised by Caleb. Never overnight. Never at Judith's apartment. Caleb had not fought that clause. That, more than anything else in the entire settlement, told Mara he had finally understood. The support number was calculated from the state worksheet. It was neither punishing nor generous. It was arithmetic. Afterward, in the hallway, with the papers signed and the case number about to become a closed file in a system, Caleb caught up to her by the elevators. He looked older. Not badly, just older, the way a year does it when the year has been the right kind of hard. Can I ask you something? Mara shifted the folder under her arm. Ask. Do you hate me? She thought about it. She actually thought about it, standing under the fluorescent lights with people moving past them on both sides, because he deserved an honest answer, and because she wanted to know herself. No. Caleb's face changed. I expected you to. I know. I think you wanted me to. That's not, he stopped. Maybe. Hating you would be easier for you. Then this would be about my anger instead of your choices. Mara, I don't hate you, she said. She picked up her purse from where she had set it on the ledge. But I don't forgive you either. The elevator arrived. Neither of them moved toward it. The doors waited, then closed on an empty car. Why, he said. And this was the part she had thought about for 11 months, in the car, at the sink, in the dark at 2 in the morning. She had practiced it and thrown it out and practiced it again, and in the end she said it simply, because forgiving you would make me responsible for making you feel better about what you did. He stared at her. That's what forgiveness is for, Caleb. It's a gift the injured person gives so the person who did the injuring can put it down. And I've spent 9 years carrying things so you wouldn't have to. Your mother. Your avoidance. Every hard conversation in that house. I'm not carrying this one. She looked directly at him. You have to live with your choices. That's not cruelty. That's just where they belong. Caleb's jaw worked. He nodded slowly, and there was no argument left in him. Will you tell her? Someday. What I did. I'll tell her the truth if she asks. All of it, including the part where you put your mother out of the house and stopped fighting me about the clauses that protected her. Mara pressed the elevator button. That part is yours too. You don't get to erase the first thing, but you did the second thing. She'll get both. He swallowed. Thank you. Don't thank me. It's just accurate. The doors opened. She stepped in and turned around, and he was still standing there in the hallway in the suit she had bought him 7 years ago. Caleb. Yeah. Be on time for Saturday. She notices. The doors closed. Mara walked out of the courthouse into July heat that came up off the sidewalk in waves, and she stood on the top step for a second with her eyes closed, and then she went to get her daughter. They got home at 6. The house looked exactly the way it had looked a year ago from the outside. Same siding. Same crack in the second driveway square. The maple by the mailbox had put on a little more height. Her daughter's head, and held it there and let the moment be as long as it needed to be. Mom. Yeah, Bug. Is Grandma coming back? Mara knelt down. She was careful about this. She had thought about how she would answer this question since October, and she had decided on 2 rules. She would never lie, and she would never make her 8-year-old carry the details. No. Why? Mara chose her words the way she had chosen every word in that timeline a year ago. Because sometimes adults make choices, and choices have consequences. Grandma made some choices about you and about me that weren't okay. And now she doesn't get to live here. That's not you being punished. That's her. Lily thought about it. Mara watched her turn it over, 8 years old, working on it. Did she get in trouble? Not the kind you get. The grown-up kind. Mara brushed a piece of hair off her forehead. You didn't do anything wrong. Not one single thing. I need you to know that for the rest of your life. Okay. Say it. I didn't do anything wrong, Lily said, in the flat, obedient voice of a child repeating something. And then she paused and said it again, differently. I didn't do anything wrong. That's right. Lily nodded. Then her whole face changed, the way children's faces do, and she was somewhere else entirely. Can we have pizza? Mara laughed. It surprised her, coming out of her chest like that, loud in the quiet house. Absolutely. They went downstairs. Mara ordered from the place on the corner that always took 10 minutes longer than they said, and they ate it out of the box on the living room floor with paper towels instead of plates because there was nobody in the house to have an opinion about it. Nobody told Lily she had to wait. Nobody stood in the kitchen doorway with their arms crossed, counting what she ate. Nobody reorganized the refrigerator or moved the milk to a shelf a child could not reach. Nobody told Mara where she belonged in her own home. After Lily fell asleep, Mara went back up and stood in the doorway of that bedroom for a while, the way she used to, and looked at the drawing above the bed. She took an honest accounting. She had lost a marriage of 9 years. She had lost a retirement account. She had built one paycheck at a time. She had lost the illusion, which she had held quietly her whole life, that family automatically meant loyalty, that one had cost the most, and she was not sure it would ever fully stop hurting. But she had gained something she had not owned before. She had shown her daughter, in a way that no lecture could ever have managed, that love is not a thing you buy by accepting humiliation, that the people who tell you to keep the peace are usually the ones benefiting from it, that you can be kind and still be immovable. And the two women who had stood in this room with a measuring tape, deciding that an 8-year-old could sleep on a couch, had ended up with nothing they came for. Judith had a one-bedroom apartment and a phone that mostly did not ring. Renee had a second-shift job and a lease in her own name. Neither of them had Caleb. Neither of them had this house. Neither of them had a place at this table. Mara had not done that to them. She had simply stopped standing between them and the outcome of their own decisions. That was the whole of her revenge. She had not destroyed anyone. She had put down a weight she had been carrying for people who never once asked whether it was heavy and let them find out what it felt like on their own shoulders. She turned off the hall light. Downstairs, the house was quiet, and the quiet was hers, and for the first time in a very long time, it felt like home.